Wait for the beep. Yeah, recording in progress. We got it. Okay, cool. So I guess I take this over. Sorry for a bit of background noise. I'm trying to get rid of my two kids who are helping me as the schools unfortunately don't happen right now. But I guess for many it's a familiar situation. Okay, I see more faces that I know. For some of you, this might be actually a repetition because I wonder if Liana probably has already heard this and so on. So I hope I still entertain you and you find some new aspects of the pitching. But for the others, then welcome in the world of public speaking, but for startups. I see that there's many of you who already are doing something and actually have your own businesses. So I hope this also will be practical for you, so you can actually apply it instantly. And yeah, let's kick this off. I will share my screen and let's get going. A few rules before I do that. Please keep your questions in the chat if you have them as we go, and I will try to kind of pause in between once we switch kind of sections, and then we can go through and see which questions I can answer. If you have really kind of like burning question about something that I'm speaking, then raise your hand and I'll give you floor to ask it. So kind of comments in chat, super important things with a raised hand. And if we still have time at the end, then we can do a quick Q&A. If not, then Anna will probably be helping you book some one-on-one sessions with me a bit later on for some lucky ones, I guess, as we're a bit limited on the spot. Alrighty, let's get to the slides. Give me a second and getting there. And you should be seeing them in a bit as they're loading. Anna, do we have the slides? We have the slides. Cool. So Startup School of Schools. Welcome. I guess this is the second session that you're having. I hope the first one was a good one, and I hope to keep it up. In my day-to-day life, as Anna already mentioned, I am representing and working at Startup Wise Guys Accelerator. Actually, I usually have a marketing hat on, and pitching is something that I do out of joy, out of fun, and just because I really, really like it. And then good old times when I was working with that, it was also here. I managed to also train some of our clients in the PR to answer difficult questions from media or speak publicly. So that's where it's growing. But for the last 5 years, I've been doing this actually with the startups. So Juris, for example, is already from our portfolio, and good to see you back here. The accelerator, well, we make people pitch every day. so beware. But of course, there's different ways to go about it. And today I'm going to mostly focus more on the slides and how to work with a 3 minutes pitch, which is usually the standard pitch that you would be requested to do either for a startup event, so technology conference, or to talk with investors. So let's get going. We will cover 3 aspects. First one, we're going to very, very quickly recap what pitch is, mostly for those who might not be from the startup bubble just yet and kind of getting into the grips of the terminology. Then we're going to look through the basic elements, what should be, or the kind of like skeleton anatomy of the 3 minutes pitch, what should be on it, what you should cover as you go through it. And the last is going to be more kind of practical session. I hope we have enough time for that, which is basically how to just go about it if you're first time preparing a pitch deck, or maybe second time, but still want to start from a fresh start. Kind of how to go, but how to think about it, and also how to work with your audience. So very, very simply, a pitch is a super short and catchy company or product presentation, but I like to look at it differently. I like to think about a pitch as a way to open doors. And I was just last week talking about pitching with as part of the career week with teenagers, and they're like, "Oh, what the pitch is? It's in sports, right? When you kind of, I don't know, where you score a goal or something." And I'm like, "No, it's actually a lot better analogy is that it's like a trailer for a movie." So a pitch basically is trailer for your startup, or trailer for your idea, trailer for your product. So something that kind of encompasses the essence or just triggers interest. And very rarely, it's also a stage performance, as you will see in some of the examples. Why it's important to think about a pitch as something that opens doors or is a trailer? Because in 3 minutes, and sometimes even a shorter format, as short as 60 seconds or 30 seconds even, you won't be able to tell everything there is to tell. Therefore, it's important to understand that pitch is just something that you create curiosity, you create this desire to book a meeting, and then you will have way more time once you have this proper meeting to explain about everything. This also means that you have to choose what aspect or kind of what winning strategy do you want to use for your pitch, which focus you want to put on. For example, very often startups who are in very early days, they focus more on the vision, how are they changing the world, or where the idea came from. However, usually later on, a lot of startups focus on the traction. So they already focus on what they have already built, either in terms of product or in terms of business, how many existing clients they have, and so on. So basically, choose something and remember that you just want to open doors. I hope so far so good. You could show me, you can use emojis to show that you're alive. There in the background, I see only a few faces in my in this view. And I'm sure that majority of you actually already know this. So I will move forward. This is know thy audience and what is your goal is basically bottom line for any attempt to speak to someone, right? You actually have to know to whom you're talking and actually why you are doing that. And specifically for startups, and specifically if you're doing something in a very difficult industry, let's say it's biotech, science commercialization, cybersecurity, you have to be very careful with your professional lingo. So how complicated can be your language. For example, for me, one of the worst pitches I've ever heard come from cybersecurity. Man, those guys just don't know how to explain it simply. And the problem is that if they are pitching a very complex, very cybersecurity terms driven presentation to an audience that does not understand it, that audience is gone. However, if a startup from cybersecurity is pitching to a cyber investor and using this terminology, they probably are proving their worth. They're probably proving their expertise. So you have to be very kind of careful of kind of who the audience is, what's their knowledge level about what you're telling, and how simply not to lose them by being too theoretic or too specific about your industry. Ansis is marking a check mark. I'm just checking in the chat in the background, so all good there. And sometimes, especially if you have to pitch nowadays, that well, especially in Latvia right now, tech conferences are being canceled, removed. But if you have to pitch to a large audience, not to a small one, you might say, okay, how do I know who's in the audience? Then the goal makes a big difference. Basically, it means that you have to figure out whom you would want to talk to. Let's say you're fundraising, you probably want to have actually effect on the investors. Maybe you're not fundraising, but you need a CTO in the company. Then kind of that's your goal. That also means who your audience is. It's kind of you lead this, you lead the show. You're the master of this, so you get to choose. This specifically is also important if you are participating in any pitch competition. For example, tech conferences do it very often. I will also show you some examples from TechChill, pitch 50 Founders Battle. Then again, you are kind of competing with others. And this is where, again, knowing who your audience is, what's your goal is, and also what's your strategy. So how are you going to open those doors makes a lot of sense. This has been a bit of a warm-up. So I'm gonna instantly jump into the anatomy of the 3-minute pitch. This is a format we use at Startup Wise, guys. This is not the ultimate Bible, meaning that you can definitely change the sequence. You can leave out some things. You can add additional things. In the next slide, I'll show you what slides you could consider adding. But in a nutshell, this would be what an specifically investor would be expecting you to tell about your startup. Basically, the first part, if you look the points 1, 2, 3, it's mostly explaining the context of what you're building. So you have to explain kind of what problem have you seen, noticed, observed. who are your customers, so who has this pain, who has this problem, right? And how are you gonna solve it? So what is the actual solution or the product that you want to present? So basically, in the first 3 points, you're setting the scene. And if you do it well, hopefully you hook the audience and they're actually really curious to kind of listen further. The middle part of the pitch, so if you look at the points like competition, market and business, traction, status, also goals partially, it mostly explains where you're at and what is the broader context. So how do you look, how do you fit in, for example, in the market, right? Like with whom are you competing? How is your product or solution positioned? How are you actually going to get to those clients? What have you already done so far, either in terms of product, for example, have you already developed it, launched it, beta tested, it's already bringing money. So if it's bringing money, kind of what's your status in terms of the financials? And if you look at the end, the last parts, last bones of the 3 minutes pitch, that's kind of actually, I call it like the breather. That's the part where you can again pick up a bit lighter vibe, and you can prove that your team is the right one to actually pull this off. And also you can use this speaking opportunity to ask something to the audience. I'll tell a bit more about it later on, but that's something that we just suggest because you never know who is there in the audience and how they can help you. And if you don't ask, well, you don't get anything. And I think everybody in the startup world knows how to hustle, that you have to ask, you have to dig for it. So definitely that's pitch is just one more opportunity to do that. And if we look from public speaking, or kind of like the call it like, in essays, right? You have this kind of beginning, then you have the middle, then you have the culmination, and then you have the finale. So basically, if we look at the pitch, probably the most important part, at least to get the audience's attention and this willingness to listen to you, is at the beginning and at the end. At the beginning is the moment when they choose, do I even want to listen? Do I even want to bother? And again, talking to youngsters, they totally prove the point. I'm like, oh my God, how many seconds do you need to understand if you want that TikTok or that Insta reel, right? I think investors and audience in tech conferences and elsewhere probably is a bit more patient, but they still probably choose very early on, do they want to listen to you further? So kind of the beginning is your opportunity to catch their attention and make them listen to the middle of the pitch. However, at the end, they're already kind of, okay, they're finishing, so again, there's a bit more lighter energy, and you actually can use that moment to kind of remind certain things, not only the ask, but for example, at the end, you can also talk about the vision. If you have something around your business, then kind of remind, why is this important? Why is this important beyond just, I don't know, paying bills? So there's also kind of like there's this spike in the beginning and spike in the end. And again, one more time, a reminder, these are kind of Lego bricks. The way you want to tell your story is your choice. For example, there are startups who like to start talking about team. So they use the team as a hook, and then they kind of explain everything else in a sequence. I have seen at least one or two pitches where a startup starts actually with something around competition, which is very interesting. That they say, "Hey, do you know this other startup? It's already a unicorn, and now we're building something similar, but for a different market. Let me tell you about it." So again, they kind of have put the Lego bricks in a different sequence, and that's totally okay. But if you're doing this for the first time, this is a very easy structure to follow, and you will just not go wrong. And I usually suggest to kind of follow this one and then start playing around when you're already comfortable. Another thing is, again, I said that's totally not written in stone. You can leave out or add certain things. The only thing you have to take into account, if you're pitching somewhere where there's a very strict 3 minutes format, which happens to be the case very often, then you just have to time yourself and see for what you have enough time. One trick that you can use if you have some very, very good insights that require a bit longer time and you are afraid that it's not going to fit in 3 minutes, you can leave out something from this core. I'm actually going to go back to the previous slide. For example, competition is difficult to explain. You can leave it out because the chances that somebody will ask you in the Q&A session are super high. And in that case, you will win time, because usually if the pitch is 3 minutes, then the Q&A session is at least additional 3 minutes. So if you have something that is really valuable, really good, needs a bit more time, leave it out consciously. Of course, there can be 5% of chance nobody asks you that stuff. Well, you're lost, right? But here again, I remind you have to make tough choices. You have to cut out certain things. But let's assume that you're fine with timing. So these are some things that you can add, and I will quickly explain. For example, if you look at the number 2 business model, sometimes business model is super straightforward. Like, it's so simple that you actually don't need even additional slide for that. However, if it's very, very complex, this is usually the case for marketplaces where you have a complex market where you're serving different audiences at the same time and putting them in touch, you actually might want to add it. If it's super simple, don't add a slide. If it's complex, you might want it. Why now? This was a very, and also the COVID-19 update, even though I haven't seen them lately, but when the first wave of COVID hit in last year in spring, what we saw that 90% of startups trying to pitch for investment for Startup Wise Guys, they did not take into account that the world had radically changed. It's a lot better now. Well, we've also been living through that shit for a lot longer time. But in that spring, we were very surprised that very rarely we would see a startup addressing the change in the market. And I would say there's a lot of industries where why now is the most powerful hook or the most powerful slide you can have. For example, the ed tech, so education technologies, have changed like dramatically because of pandemic, right? The same is with anything that is e-commerce or delivery, logistics services, definitely medtech. So there's a lot to say why now, remote working, mental health, and so on. If you have an angle that if there's something that has radically changed in the market and right now is the perfect timing for what you're building, then definitely use that card. Additional number 3, 4, and 5 are more kind of technical suggestions. I personally am a visual thinker. I really love roadmaps. I think they're just a very good way to explain where you're at in your journey. And as we know, for startup journeys, like up and down in beginning and then you're back again. I'm joking, but it's good to show both the past, what you have already, let's say, built if you're talking about a product, and you can show what's still ahead of you. Because especially if you're talking to the investors, they actually are more interested about the future. They're more interested about the growth. They're more interested about your ambition or your readiness to actually do certain things than maybe what you have done in the past, which awards you have won, or which other kind of badges you can put to yourself. Existing clients is something that I actually often see underused, which really, really surprises me, because I think that's one of the best cards if you're already that far that you have launched something in the market and there are people who are actually paying for it. That's of course, here you have to take into account very, very important thing, especially if you're talking either about private entities, then you have GDPR to take into account. So people have to give you consent to use their data. On the other hand, if you talk about companies, as the case Startup Wise Guys mostly works with business to business startups, you have to be very, very careful if you have actually rights to use, let's say, a logo or any other corporate identity or the name of those clients. Are they okay that you communicate them? We have had a case when we had to take down from YouTube a whole demo day video because one startup had not checked this with the client, and the client came back and said, we don't want our logo there. So I've seen this happening pretty regularly. So just be aware that you need to ask for things. An additional thing that I think also works really, really good, if you have not only you can say, oh, I don't know, we have Swedbank we're working with, or we have SEB or something, is also very, if you have testimonials or referrals from the clients or some kind of survey of their feedback, that's again something I almost never see it in Fidgetex, and I can't understand why, because it's such a low-hanging fruit if you actually have those clients, just to ask them what do they like about your product, or what's the experience has been. I would say it's very, very powerful to prove that you're not bullshitting. And how it works is something that you should include if you build something that is not straightforward, understandable, especially if it's somehow technologically difficult. I think we have Agna here, right? If I remember the name correctly of the crazy vibrating sound gadget. And I think for her, for example, I know that she has in her pitch very good demos of how that actually works, and you really have to explain it, because otherwise people will be lost if they don't get it. So I have right now, like in a super speed, covered the anatomy of the 3-minute pitch. I was wondering if there's any question at this stage, or so far so good. You could show me thumbs up with the emojis if you're doing okay. And I will, yep. And before we go into hooks, I actually wanted to entertain you a little bit with some examples. So we'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, I see David showing me thumbs up. I hope everybody else is alive. Agna is smiling, as I even remembered her pitch. You actually should show, if we have time, you should show how your product works. I love it. You have very nice visualizations in your pitch. Alrighty, so I will. I see no questions there. Mostly you are smiling and showing me thumbs up. Then I will share some examples, and then we're going to go deeper into this anatomy, kind of into the specific sections, specifically about hook. And yeah, but let's watch some things. And while you watch, I will torture you afterwards. I will actually ask few people to share your insights. And basically there's two types of questions. One is, was it understandable? So did you get it, what they're pitching? Spoiler alert, there will be only one bad example today. So in most cases, you should understand. And secondly, did you notice some cool things or something that you're like, oh, that was smart. Like, I liked how they did this. I liked how they used this trick. So if you notice some of those things, and you can write them in the chat, but I will also be happy if somebody is brave enough to unmute and maybe share with us. And in the meantime, okay, I see Ramas is asking me a question. If you don't mind, I will address it after I share the examples, and then yeah, writing okay. Then it's okay. Give me a second, as I need to share also the sound, and I hope it's gonna work just well. Tum tum tum. Let's go to our first share sound. Perfect. Okay, put full screen. I hope you see it. And this is a few years back, as you see it, actually 2018, still happening on site, full-blown tech conference. So let's see how this startup was pitching. And as I remind you, so two things: do you understand, and what cool tactics he was using?
Thank you. The next up is Silver from Finland. Here, you will get this for me. Good hunting.
If you own a forest anywhere in the world today, you are being ripped off. Let me explain. The way that forests are currently measured for value might as well be from the Stone Ages. A guy goes into your forest with one of these. He then spins into a circle and goes, yeah, right. It's worth about $2 million. Now, obviously, that's quite inaccurate. In fact, they can be off by millions. This $2 million valuation can actually mean $1 million or $3 million. That's up to a 50% inaccuracy in your valuation. You might as well just burn half of your forest right now. You might as well just take your trees down to Vegas and throw them down the roulette table, because you are gambling with your assets. And when your forest valuations are wrong, you are selling wood blind, you are buying wood blind, and your insurance costs are completely off. If you look at the world, and just at Finland alone, where we're from, that's over 630,000 forests which are valued inaccurately. And they're all losing tons of money. So how do we solve this worldwide issue? 3 words: silvere, silvere, and silvere. This is our team. This is our team. We're a group of hired guns, all recruited from other companies to make this happen. And what our company does is we send drones to your forest, lots of them. And the way that it works is they're equipped with the most advanced LiDAR and laser scanning technologies and artificial intelligence in the world. And this is how the operations go. So they go scan, scan, beep, boop. They then send it down to our server somewhere, which also goes, I believe, beep, boop. And then we just know all the trees in your forest. It's that simple. So every single tree, its height, its width, its volume, its value today, as well as into the future. So when we tell you that your forest is worth 3 million, it's magically worth 3 million because we know what we're talking about. It's very accurate. On top of that, we give you a beautiful user interface to manage all of your assets and click on every single tree in a forest. And best of all, we're the exact same cost as these other guys. Sounds interesting? Right now, we're looking for forest owners who will get a free forest management plan for helping us out. And we're also hiring a ton of developers who get a range of amazing benefits as well. So if you're interested...
Your time is up.
We're launching in spring. So keep a lookout for us. We're Silvere, not Zoo. We know your trees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about the clicker, man.
Yeah.
But your pitch was amazing.
Alrighty, I saw some happy smiley faces. So, okay, let's do with the, you know where the reaction sign is. So thumbs up if you understood what they are doing. I think everybody did, right? Anybody didn't understand? No, everybody did. Alrighty. Oh, okay, Ansis is saying he actually saw them live. Yeah, well, they were really powerful. Like I still remember this pitch. And fun fact, they did not win the pitch battle, which was very interesting. That year, actually, Anatomy next won because their traction was better. This is the choose what your strategy, right? Okay, anybody feels like they want to share some of the tricks that you maybe noticed, Ansis, maybe if you have seen them live, what was maybe something that kind of was stuck with you that they did well? I see only Ansis's forehead, so I don't know if he's he's with us. Alrighty, let's see. Answer saying storytelling. Okay, David is saying hook was great, kept me in there. Okay, so what's the solution? Mindset until the end. Edward's is saying memes, pay attention, humor, simplicity, fun moments. Yeah, Answer, if you're here, if you want to, you can share a little bit since you have the unique case that you've seen them live. Clever visuals.
Hey, I can jump in.
Go. Okay,
so I saw that they're playing with words very in a cool way, and it keeps the attention for the listener.
No.
I think.
Cool, thanks. Edith, we have you. I guess I will mute you and we hear a bit of a background. Anybody else? Okay, so I will ask different question. Would you invest in them? Because I actually, yeah. So for example, when I've shown this video example to startups in our portfolio, many say, "Oh my God, such a bullshit." See, Raymond is saying sounds good, but no. When I showed it to youngsters that are kind of in one Swedish School of Economics program, it was very interesting. There was one guy is like, I want to be hired by them today. So he was like, I'm all in. But especially ladies, a lot of them noticed there was no information about their business whatsoever. And actually, that was also the reason why they didn't win the pitch competition. Yeah, exactly. So, right. So that's it, would buy their service. But Tatiana is saying exactly what some others noticed, not enough information to decide. And actually, they did not have answers, and I have never heard about them again. And also having such a big team without proper traction is something that an investor would be worried about. But definitely, so the hook was great. The guy really could, you could see he has been trained to do public speaking. Many people noticed his confidence. If you have to do pitch actually on a stage on site, he did a smart trick. He actually checked the microphone. I don't know if you noticed, he did the kind of sound before he started. He was really struggling with the clicker, but actually he still did it okay-ish, kind of with his own style, because you can also do it in a really bad way. It's like, oh my God, this clicker isn't working. What the hell, tech guys? I have had a case when clicker just did not work on the Digital Freedom Festival stage. So I was just told, okay, tech guys, next slide, let's do this. And one of our startups in the same day actually pitched without slides whatsoever because they couldn't get the slides working. The clicker was just doomed. So also remember, especially when you're on stage, different things can happen. There were some people who said actually that he was not, how to say, he assumed that the audience are dummies. I don't know if you've had the same feeling. The more I watch him, the more I feel like he's treating me like an idiot, especially the part with the drones and beep, boop, bop. And again, there might be a case when that perfectly works. And as we see, a lot of you actually really like what they did, but there might be a situation where that really, really puts people off. And for a majority from like serious investors who are usually more data-driven people, they actually like numbers, they like precision and so on. They did not give them very high ranking, just so you know. But again, depends who the audience is, depends what's the goal. If their goal was mostly to get for example, forest owners, see, that's reacted the right way. So maybe that was their strategy all along. Maybe they actually didn't care about the investors and does the pitch like this. Cool. Thanks also for being so active. And in the chat, let's look at another example. Also from Textual from a while back. I will get to share the screen. Sound on. Bingo.
Okay, hi, my name is Simon and I'm introducing Hive. Our team is united by a single purpose. We want to become a global GNSS correction signal provider. And here is how we're going to do that. There are lots of industries which can't imagine their day-to-day operations without high precision positioning and navigation. These industries are drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, cadastral surveying, mining, construction, agriculture, or even science, when people want to study such phenomena as the motion of the Earth crust. In order to do their job, they need a professional GPS receiver. But to get their job done, they need a source of data that will send corrections to this receiver and correct floating signals that are coming from satellites. This source of data is called a continuously operating reference station, and the station allows its users to get this much of positioning precision. So the stations are deployed on the ground and form a ground infrastructure. Each station works within a range of 50 kilometers and transmits correction to the end user. And there are problems, of course. Governments can't pay enormous expenses to deploy a centralized ground infrastructure. Users are struggling to find a single access point to all deployed stations. And station owners don't want to pay overrated prices for station management software. We saw that and created Hive. It's a cloud platform as a service that provides a single, easy access to all deployed stations around the world for everybody. It's like a super system that unites existing stations.
I'm gonna stop here. I don't think we need the full pitch. So question, anybody understood what he's pitching? No, not the target. Oh, I saw Agnes' face. Alexei, you're like something. Do you want to try to explain to us what do you think he was pitching?
May I try?
Hi.
Yeah, go. Let's listen to Alexei and Elena. Then you can.
Well, I understood that they're trying to improve the GPS signal to improve GPS coordinates, and by using this ground antenna, ground module. But I didn't get the idea. They said that it's too expensive, even government can't afford it. But who can? If government can't afford it, who can then? What are they proposing? They're proposing a very expensive solution.
Okay,
So,
thanks. But you have gotten it more or less, right, Elena?
Well, if I understood right, they have this I don't know, what is that, the Wi-Fi GPS whatever from the satellites, and because it goes through that would be hard. I thought it would be easier. They can't actually directly sell a special amount to each need. let's say this. So they created a hive that actually will be resource. It would be so hard. I'll try other time, sorry.
No, thanks for being brave, because this definitely, as I told you, it's spoiler alert, only one bad pitch example today. Well, I guess you all got it. This is it. But fun fact, we actually invested in the startup. When they came for the first mentoring session with me for marketing, they used all of the mentoring session just to explain what they were doing. And it was like, guys, you have a problem, because you can't explain it even in 15 minutes. But let me show you another video with the years difference, and let's see if you get it now.
Hi everyone. We live in the world of machines, autonomous tractors, trains, self-driving cars, ships, drones. All of them use GPS satellites for navigation. But for autonomous machines, this navigation must be super accurate, down to 1 centimeter. It's mission critical for big industries to define the location of their assets, just with this much precision. Size matters, right? So all of these machines, in order to be positioned accurately, have to be connected to a special correction station. This station is deployed on the ground and works within a range of 100 kilometers. And there are thousands of them in Europe. They are all owned by governmental or commercial data providers. They're all different. And I am, as a drone owner, don't know how to find this station, how to connect to it. Is it working or not? What equipment is there? What software is there? How to sign a contract? So these questions pop up again and again each time I want to start a new project. And by going through all of them, I lose time and resources. We saw that problem and created Hive, a solution for super accurate GPS navigation in real time. Hive unifies the market and brings all of the data providers and all of their correction stations under one roof. And they're all available in one place, a marketplace. And our business model is simple. When we sell the data, we take 50% of the revenue. The market is almost 5 billion euros and it's gonna grow twice by 2025. And we can go for it. Because we've built this system before. Back in Russia, my team contracted more than 100 data providers whose 500 stations cover 1/3 of the world's biggest country. But now is the time to go global, and we can do that. So we created a company here and got baked by startup wise guys. And now we are approved by European Space Agency Business Incubation Center. We have a great team of mathematicians building positioning algorithms, computer scientists, information security professionals, engineers who doesn't want to do anything else but build Hive. And I want you to join me along the journey, because right now we are not raising, but I need your help to connect these stations to us from Baltics and Western Europe. We tested our software with Starship, but we are looking for other companies that are building future machines now. Drones, robots, unmanned systems, and vehicles. This is how the future is going to be. Amazing. And if you want to build it with us, please come talk to me after the show. Thank you. I'm Simon from Hive.
Wait.
Now everyone understands the product, right? And he actually had a phrase, right, that which was so simple and so clear. And this is a pitch before and after. Of course, there's a lot what the founders themselves did, but this is also a proof that training and, of course, objectively working also on your business and explaining it you can go from one to another. Also, you could see that they used a lot of used a lot of educational kind of approach. There was a lot of explanations. Yes, I see that Julie is already mentioning. No clear. Well, they actually had the call for action. It's a question that did you notice? But basically, they spent a lot of the pitch time to explain stuff. That's why he was really quickly jumping over maybe some of the business metrics. He got still quite tough questions and answers afterwards with investors, especially about the business model, as you could expect. Also, they didn't tackle competition at all, if you noticed. But it's interesting because they're also building something for future. And for anyone who's doing that, you probably need to kind of explain more this kind of like high level things. Anybody notice something cool? What they were doing? What was maybe something that kind of stick to you and you're like, okay, that was smart? It's like, at least you understood. I hope you were like, finally, right? For example, he used a lot of proof points. He mentioned Starship, so that's actually super well-known robotics startup in Estonia, and they actually were targeting Estonian investors, so they name dropped that specifically. They did very well around proving that they have experience in Russia. If you noticed, he even said that 1/3 of the world's largest country or something like that. Again, so kind of gave a context to what they're talking about. Yes, I see GPS visualization was very useful. Exactly. Yeah. So there was a lot of this explanatory, a lot of these moving circles, a lot of this connectivity, these radiuses and so on. And definitely the visuals paid. Like if you remember this previous presentation, it was like, it's not helping. Like you're looking at the slides and it just makes it worse. Then in this case, I think it's a very good example how slides can really help tell the story and explain complex things. Definitely also you could notice the confidence level, right? If in the first one he could barely talk because he was speeding so much, and this one he was pausing very well. He actually was kind of making a point. Okay, Agnes, I see we're jumping into specific questions, and I had another one from, I guess, Raimond's before. I will quickly answer about the competition. Totally. If you are, so the question is there a politically correct way on how to describe competition? If you go and say, well, there's this competitor and they suck and we're amazing, well, that's probably not the right way. And I will have a bit of depth on the competition slide. But on the other hand, if you are saying, hey, this is how the market looks like, So we have these guys here in this geography, these guys that do exactly what we do, but for a different target audience. And by the way, I love startups who like their competition. I am like, to me, it's definitely like sparks me, because I'm like, they know it and they can respect somebody who has built something good. Because very often you will have a lot of competition out there. First of all, you have to know them. So if a startup says, oh, there's no competition, it's blue ocean, and I'm like, yeah, right. You probably haven't gotten something correctly. You haven't done the research. But secondly, if you're disrespectful, to me, it's a red flag, for example, as I'm like instantly triggered by it. And I hope that answers right now. And again, you have to be, I think if you're just explaining the market, you can actually use logos and you can show who's where, because you're just describing the scene. If you go into depth, especially negatively, that's where you can get in trouble, especially in US, because somebody can, I don't know, end up suing you because you are saying bad stuff about their brand and you're using their logo without consent and blah, blah, blah. So just be a nice person and you'll be fine. I have one last example up my sleeve. I want to show you that one, and then we're going to go into depth of some of these things specifically. So let me show you this one, and then you're done with the example watching from me for tonight. Let me put the full screen. Yep. This is a shorter pitch, by the way. For those who think that 3 minutes is not enough, this is less than 2 minutes. So watch it.
We're Pepper, and we're a clothing company for small-chested women, and we're starting with bras. Women are now redefining their body standards. They're done with being told what they need to look like. And the companies that are embracing body positivity are the ones that are stealing market share from companies like Victoria's Secret. I get the question all the time, why do you even need to wear a bra? Well, they're still boobs. And when I do wear a bra, I don't completely fill it, so it creates this awkward bra gap. And companies think if you have small breasts, it must mean you want a push-up bra to look bigger. But no one gets that I just want to look like myself and celebrate what I've got. This is our first product, the All You Bra, that we launched in April on Kickstarter, and it features our authentic lift design that eliminates bra gaps and creates natural-looking cleavage. We also recently just worked with our R&D team to create custom molded bra cups because all the cups out there weren't cutting it for us. Our unique bra cups are shallower in depth, ensuring that perfect fit. And the difference is huge, right? All puns intended. No more bra gaps, no more heavy push-up padding, just all you. And the response from our community was incredible. In just 10 hours, we were 100% funded. We were featured in over 30 press outlets, including Cosmopolitan, Glamour Magazine, Daily Mail, and so much more, because everyone was so excited to share our story. So we're positioning Pepper as the affordable bra for all small-chested women. 61% of women in America wear a AA, A, or B cup. That's a $4 billion market that's currently going underserved. So we want to close the literal and figurative gap in the industry. Thank you.
All right. There's nothing politically correct about this one. This example, I especially love the male audience reactions. One of our batch startups were laughing that the biggest gain from a session with me was that they finally know that there's a term bra gap. So at least take it with you tonight. I guess everybody understood what they're pitching, and I see already comments. David is writing actual numbers, market possibilities. That's definitely one thing that they did very, very smart. At the end of the pitch, they dropped numbers, right? They were proving that this is not some kind of bullshit 5% random females who actually need this. Anything else you noticed? She actually had the full hands of various tricks up her sleeve that she was using. Who noticed? Yeah, the word plays. So Agni, you were asking about competition. Did you notice how she lured Victoria's Secret in the beginning? So that was, for example, a very elegant way. So she kind of said, oh, like, F them, but she did it in a very, very kind of nice way, but also proving, hey, we're playing with the big guys here. We're not some kind of small random company. We have ambition. Who noticed, for example, the magazines and the press outlets that they were mentioning, right? There was like Glamour, and there was like I don't remember, like 4 of them. Did you notice the Kickstarter campaign results the moment when they actually get applause? So 10 hours, right? Again, that's another proof point that they're not saying ourselves, oh, we're amazing, but they're actually having a proof point. That's actually traction. It's even though they probably hadn't directly sold stuff, but in Kickstarter you can do prepayments, so it kind of proves the market needs it. I personally really liked how humble and kind of how open and I would say raw she was about her own experience, and it fit her personality style very well, right? Especially the whole beginning when she was like, well, there's still boobs, you know, and all of that. Again, here you can also see that the humor is a very specific tool, and you can only play with it if it fits your personality. But I think in her case, she did it pretty elegantly, kind of like it was on a good level. Raymond's good question about what they wanted to achieve. Sometimes, especially in US, but I think also here, sometimes you pitch simply because you want that tick box, you want to show off and say, hey, we're actually cool. You know, those of you who go to pitching, you might have very different needs. In this particular case, I don't know the founder, so I can't answer to this question. But there might be, for example, looking for a follow-on round, or like there can be different things up their sleeve. Basically, I would say that even if you're not fundraising, pitching simply is a good way, especially in these kind of pitch competitions, to get access to a large audience. So if you're in this place where you're not yet sure whom do you need, or you're looking for some kind of feedback, or you're looking for a lot of contacts, that's a good opportunity. If you already are very far, you're very focused, you know very, very well what you need, then I would say don't waste your time. Just have a good pitch you can present, good presentation you can use on one-on-ones with already somebody you have actually kind of found, networked with, built relationship. But then probably it will also be more kind of natural flowing pitch rather than kind of stage performance, because you don't do that stuff on one-on-one calls. Alrighty, I have finished up with the examples. Is there anything else anybody wanted to comment on these ones? We are full hour. How are we doing energy wise? Well, the smiley faces are smiley. I see a hand reaching up. Okay, I hope the others who are either without cameras, that you're still fine. Yours is on fire. That's good. It's good to be on fire. Okay, then let's get back to work. I will share again my slides, and now we're gonna dissect a little bit deeper some of these elements in the 3 minutes pitch. Now give me a second. I'm sharing back my presentation. Should be loading. And Raymond, I'm going to quickly check your question that you asked before we went into the examples. So many comments to scroll back. What would be structure in an intro section about the business solution? Do you want to clarify what you mean by that, as I'm not exactly sure what intersection you mean? Diamonds. Either you can unmute and just say or write in the chat. If Diamonds doesn't, then I'm going to move full blown into the hooks. I don't see. Okay, then you can write clarification in the chat if you don't want to talk, as I'm just not sure what you wanted to know. While we wait for that, or don't wait for that, I'm going to go further. Actually, my favorite part of pitch isn't something that I really look into, is the hook or the beginning. It's the way, how do you open your presentation and how do you grab attention of the audience. And if you're not that familiar with pitches, I'm sure many or most of you listen to TED Talks, and TED Talks is a whole other world where actually this is kind of taken to the level of art how a presentation should be started, and a lot of really good ways to do it can be taken from there. Today I want to tell you only three tricks, but I will share with Anna one nice blog post about 12 ways how you can actually hook the audience. And if I go back to kind of what I said initially, so if a pitch is a door opener, then your hook is the door opener for the door opener. So kind of that's very important to just kind of get the attention, get the interest, and get your presentation going. No big surprises here. There's actually very simple tricks you can use, and many of you probably already do, and you probably know them. But let's get through them. One of the tricks to get audience's attention is very simple. You can surprise them. Very typical thing that majority, especially B2B startups, use. They share some kind of unexpected fact or some statistics, some percentages or something about their industry. Another thing is to say some kind of controversial statement, say something to which people will be like, oh, come on, you know. For example, the silver guy was kind of going into that direction, and he says, you're selling wood blind, right? So it's a controversial statement. You're like, okay, then tell me how blind, right? Why? What do you mean? And the third option under this kind of surprise item is to open up more, I guess, educational pitch, is to say, did you know that? And you can drop whatever thing you want there, and kind of open your presentation through this. And what does this do to a human brain? Any of these tricks, they trigger the brain, and the brain is kind of like, oh wow, no, I didn't know that. Oh no, what do you mean? You know, so there's some certain reaction which just asks for the people to be attentive to what's going to follow. So you kind of create movement in their brain, and they want to listen to you. And some of these are super simple. I'm sure that for any one of you here on this call, you can find some kind of unexpected fact, for example, around your business or about the problem that you're solving that you can use. I think this is super straightforward, and I'm not going to spend more time on this. Another thing is using your own either story or relating to audience on a personal level. Give me a second. I have a bit of a background. Sorry for that. Kids in the background. So if you relate on a personal level, this can mean various things. You can tell things that come kind of from your own life, and this is a very typical thing. It actually corresponds to a trick from the next section, which is telling stories. And for example, one of our portfolio startups that we invested in some while back, in the pitch, the guy goes like this: on the first day of my work, a colleague died, and I'm building a startup so that never happens again. He was from Australia. He was working in the mining industry, so it was actually kind of physically demanding work. And afterwards, he created a startup that was building wearables to detect potential work traumas, and a very powerful, very personal way to relate. Also, the bra startup used a lot of these personal kind of references, this kind of vulnerability almost to a level. It can also be a lot lighter, like one of other startup who was building a platform for pure breed dogs and their kind of competitions. He said, "Hi, my name is Andres, and I have a dog," and that's how he opened the pitch, and everybody was laughing in the kind of audience, and they were ready to listen to him. Another thing is to show empathy towards the audience. This is a very specific trick. I like to use it a lot, and that's simply being aware of people in the audience. And for example, I have been in an event where the AC wasn't working well. And the first thing I did, I went on the stage and I'm like, hey, I know we're all suffering from not having oxygen and it's getting hot in here. I'll be quick, you know? And again, people are like, oh my God, she at least understands that we are suffering here. And that gives you a connection with the audience. You can, and then there's other tricks which are maybe not related to showing empathy to them, but also people who are more confident in their public speaking usually try to involve somehow the audience. The only thing that I would suggest not to do is asking questions that require anything more than raise your hand, blah, 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 or stand up if you, because if you actually ask a question and people start trying to answer, you're going to go into a really bad place. So that's kind of relating this, kind of using either your personal side or using kind of this connection with the audience, the empathy, kind of seeing where they're at and reacting to that and kind of calling them out a little bit. That can also definitely work kind of to open. And of course, very simple. We all love to hear stories, and we like to be entertained. Telling stories is something that basically your whole pitch should be something. But you also have to be a bit careful with stories in pitch, especially if you're limited by 3 minutes format. First thing is stories take time, and you have to be sure that the story gives you so much value that you kind of can dedicate time. Well, sometimes you can tell them very, very quickly, but still, usually it's kind of like you still need those minutes. And secondly, I have a lot of startups who are like, where do I get those stories? And I'm like, well, if you don't have them, it's not like you need to invent them, because there's so many other ways how you can actually open your pitch differently without inventing a story. I definitely don't like the fake ones. So kind of, if you have something to share, how you met your co-founders, how the business idea came to you, then use it. Another thing, we already mentioned humor a little bit, there are people who like to open their presentations, be it pitch, be it just public speaking, with jokes, or use them throughout the presentation to pick up the energy. Great format only if you really can do it. And for anyone who has watched Estonians pitching, you would know that their sense of humor is very, very specific. They still sometimes pull it off, but many people from the Baltics, they're not great with this. So I would be very, very careful. And last but not least, one of my favorite words, and I've used them a lot longer time ago when I was still doing sales to the clients, is using the phrase, and I think it's a magic phrase, imagine. Opening your pitch with imagine is specifically powerful if what you are building is from either industry, field, or comes from a place that not everybody knows. So again, if you remember the audience, that they might not understand what you're talking about, starting your pitch with imagine creates this kind of hypothetical space, or this vision, you know, like this image where people can join you and they can understand you a bit better. Again, if what you're building is either complex or not mundane, this could be your superpower. I see also, see some questions popping in. Okay. I will answer them in a bit. Regarding hooks, I hope this is more or less clear. Anybody has any question at this stage? I don't see only a few faces. Some are saying no. Okay, cool. Then I go forward. Here very simple examples. By the way, those are from very early stage startups, so the slides are not fancy and they're very, very simple. But this is an actual startup, Zeti City. They're actually growing very, very fast. They're one of our very good investments. Basically they have chosen this kind of surprising fact about their industry. So they claim that 1 out of 5 customers abandon their shopping cart in e-commerce because the same day delivery is not available. And surprise, surprise, City of course provides this same day delivery. And they sometimes also use this image to start their pitch. And I didn't mention it before, but actually powerful visuals is also a very, very good way to start and kind of to hook the audience, because it's not always what you say, it's sometimes what can be seen on the slides. This is another super simple way. Do you know how data makes farming more sustainable? Of course, it's not like always you can actually hook the audience. Sometimes, like for example, this one, you have to be from that industry for you kind of to be interested to actually listening more, and to have a good hook, especially if the hook is very targeted, and also the whole problem explanation, you have to know your audience extremely well. Again, we go back audience and goal. I'm not going to go deeper here, but hook can be something that already explains the problem that you see in the world. For example, the case City, so the startup providing same-day delivery does it. So they hook it through insight into the industry and the problem that they're solving. Sometimes hook is just an artificial thing that you do, you catch the attention, and then you kind of go actually explaining what the problem is. Like, hi, I'm Andres and I have a dog is not exactly a problem statement, but it's definitely a hook. So sometimes it's together, sometimes those are two separate things. Of course, I vote for a hook that is already explaining the problem, simply so you don't waste time. You're all instantly like head on to what you need to be telling. I'm gonna check the chat. Okay. See, it's about the same question. I'll address it in a second. Target customers, here, no big surprises. You should be explaining to whom are you building, what you're building, or whose pain and problems are you solving. It might be different. You might have actually a different person who pays, especially if you're into enterprise or B2B segment. There's the person who actually writes the check versus the person who actually uses the product might be different. Give me a second. I will just hope that's not too disturbing in the background. Also here you have to kind of choose whom you prioritize. Sometimes in an early stage of a startup, you have many different applications, like many different audiences that could use your product. In that case, I would always advise to say, right now we're focusing on this audience, but potentially there's that and that and that. I don't know, right now it's for banks, but potentially, I don't know, cryptocurrencies could use the solution as well. I personally dislike demographics when people, especially that come from marketing, start talking about age groups and income levels and so on. Sometimes for B2C products, of course, it makes sense. So if you're selling to the end user, the customers out there on the street. However, it is usually better to talk about your target audience through what is their pain or what challenges they have, kind of this reality touch of why they will be actually buying your product. And if you're working in the B2B segment, definitely be specific about the type and the size of the companies that you are selling to in the industry, because it really, really matters and differs. If we talk about solution, I'm surprised, I will not have much of slides here because it depends on what you're building. But the biggest problem that I see in pitches, that they lack an internal logic, that they talk about the problem and then solution is actually either not connected to that problem or only serves very, very small part of the problem or a very specific audience in it. So here my advice is simple: keep the logic flowing. So if you're talking about electronic waste reduction, then your solution should be related to electronic waste reduction, not about, I don't know, some side thing, or if you talk about general waste problems in the world, but then you tackle only Europe and only very, very small part of it, then again, be a bit careful. Maybe you need to adjust the problem statement. I see I have a hand raised. Yep.
Yes. Well, I want to add, so this problem actually happens when, usually, as I saw in startups, when we're talking about business and a customer. As an example, my service is for a customer and I'm solving the customer problem, but I actually selling the product to the B2B. And we also faced this earlier, and a stage earlier. We solving a customer problem, but then we was telling that our client is actually B2B. So how is better to solve this slide? Yeah. Do we need to find a problem of our actual client who we're selling it to? I mean, I'm talking about B2B, or should we reverse the whole idea to the clients?
Mm-hmm. Okay, good question. We see this challenge a lot with our startups as well in the portfolio, especially the moment it's complex, right? Either complex sale in B2B segment, or as you said, right, there's a B2B2C kind of element. I hope people can follow our B2B2B wrap here. But basically, if you sell to companies, but the end user is somebody out there on the street, like a regular person, then this difficulty exists. I personally like that. Well, like I would opt for going instantly into B2B. So I would actually explain it from the who's gonna pay for it side, because probably the problem that you're solving for the B2B is a little bit different. The mistake that I usually see is that B2C side, so when you talk about the regular person on the street, is easier to tell. And a lot of startups use it in the hook, because it's more natural, it's somehow usually have better examples, it's more relatable. And what happens, first of all, you waste time, because you're talking and you carry the audience in a wrong direction. And by the time you have explained this kind of what's this kind of like umbrella layer about the end user, they might have lost the point that you're actually talking about the B2B. So that's my approach. If you still feel that it would be too disruptive, or it's too boring or something, then really minimize the end user part and very, very clearly switch to B2B. You can even say, like, I don't know, we had just a startup that graduated that had a marketplace for car repairs and car owners. And he instantly went into this, said, we're serving two audiences. For this audience is this, for this audience is that. And he was even using the slides that were very kind of like divided, and instantly like, and he kind of was over communicating. This is for B2B, this is for B2C, this is for B2B, this is for B2C. I don't know if that makes sense.
A bit, yeah. So is that the good way to use the both B2B and B2C, or not?
Those are different techniques. So okay. I would say I would opt for these two-sided if it's a really clear marketplace where both of these sides are equally important. However, because in their case, the payments were from both sides, so they actually earn money from both. So they needed both.
Got it.
If you are in a business where kind of only the B2B side is gonna pay, then I would actually focus on the B2Bs. Then I would go for the first one. I would either entirely eliminate the B2C, or I would just explain it in the beginning very, very quickly, and then do a very clear transition. So that's the problem we're solving, but that problem is way more painful for the business segment. And this is how it's like, can it just do almost like an artificial transition? That's how I would go about it. Okay, so that made sense. Yeah, I see that nod. Okay, is there one more hand up? Yeah, okay, no more hands. And Joris is writing in the chat, customer personas or buyer personas, definitely. Yes, you're talking about the complex sales. That's there's a lot to read, and maybe you actually have more sessions about it also in this program, as that's extremely important, important to understand to whom you're selling, who's making decisions, and so on. Okay, I think now it might be the right moment to address Raimond's question. As we're talking about solution and the product, I will quickly read it. What would be structure in an intersection about business solution? Yeah, so yours is answering instead of me. I will simply ask them, Raimond, did it got more clear or not? As I see, you have already a very good answer in the chat. I will leave it to him, Raimond. You have to follow up. Okay, he already said thanks, yours. Okay, cool. So I will move forward, and thanks also for a very good question about the segments. It's really not easy, and there's a lot of mistakes here that you explain the wrong problem or give the wrong context or too far off context. Yep.
Maybe I'm moving forward a lot forward or wherever. But the question is also, so if we realize that our business segment is B2C, not B2B, because they are going to pay. But I'm going to say OK Town is a optimized marketplace for outdoors activities and local tourists. Our client actually paying for their tours, and the business having a percentage. So, well, we have a percentage, but the business having a money from the sale. So how, or maybe this not for this lecture, but I'll just keep going. How we supposed to talk to the business to convince them actually work with us? Do we have to give them the same problem, the problem of the customer?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say it's tourism, yeah, and I would say that you have to do it very simply, right? What are you solving for the tourist business? You're probably providing them additional revenue stream, additional marketing opportunity or something. So it's very, very simple, I would say, probably, and that's what you probably have to tell them. You have to put, finger on what hurts for them. And I think if you understand their pain, that's the most powerful sales you can have. But for that, you definitely need to kind of try to see. And if you have existing clients, they probably can even tell you, what are you solving for them? Does that answer?
Yeah, well, I hope we will have some other time. I don't want to take so many attention.
Yes, let's see. You have to harass Anna. She's managing my schedule afterwards, but I think we're supposed to have at least 4 one-on-one sessions to go deeper for those of you who need it. I'm super happy to answer those questions because that it helps. But yes, basically, very often those are very different problems and very different things that you're solving, right? For somebody, you're saving time. For somebody, you're giving opportunity to earn more. For somebody, you're giving diversification of channels, so it's different, and it's definitely very, very different in B2B and B2C segment. That's my rule of thumb. But let's leave it for a separate session then, or unless we have time at the end. Here's a very, very quick example about logic. And this is from also one startup. By the way, these are the slides that they send, not present. That's why they have a lot of text. But basically, they start the pitch with saying what's wrong with the sales predictions. So you can see again they're using this first surprise trick. And then they instantly say, well, we will have 93% accurate predictions. And then they explain how are they going to do it. So through machine learning and other things. So they kind of first create the context. They already say the promise, and then they explain how will that actually be done. And then they kind of wrap it up and say, well, it's as simple as Google search, right? So that's just a chunk of one startup pitch. Okay, then if we go zoom in into product. Fun fact, very often startups forget that they actually have a product and that they need to talk about it. I understand when you're building it, it's your baby, so you think it's kind of straightforward and everybody knows, but it's actually not true. And here you have to be very creative, especially if you're building something that is software, so nothing to show. Then you have to understand what is a way how you can portray and give a reality touch to what you're doing. Screenshots, mock-ups, photos of customers using the product. So kind of you figure it out. For example, in the picture, that's an actual startup from our portfolio, that's Castprint, the CEO Sigvards, and he always, whenever he pitches, he would use the 3D printed cast, which is also their product. So that's a great way to actually show the product kind of instantly and also be memorized. We have another startup that is building VR solutions for real estate. For example, they ditched the pitch deck like slides entirely, and while they were pitching, they were actually showing in the background the simulation of the product. It's a brave way to do it, but hey, I mean, you can do that. And the only thing you have to be aware of if you're using something more sophisticated like video format, some kind of demoing format, test technology twice and 3 times and 4 times, because God knows it's probably not going to work when you really, really need it. So also be a bit careful not to overcomplicate your slide deck with something that can go wrong, because things most likely will. Yes, for those who are building something that is more kind of software oriented, then or anyway, give it a name, say what it is. If it's something that is a mobile app or mobile first solution, say it. If it's only a technology, then say it. If it's a combination of something, then go it. If it's web-based, it's web-based. So it's easier for the audience kind of just to kind of put reality touch on top of it. And if it's something that you have already built and there's a lot of nuances to talk about, then again, be careful not to go too much into details. And often what you can do is, for example, have more complex things on a slide, but in the voiceover only emphasize certain things, or the vice versa. Have a very simple slide, but then a very simple visualization, but then in a voiceover, you can explain more kind of complex things or the uniqueness of the particular product. I would say, I hope that by product, we are so far so good. I mean, whatever you have, show it. and also a separate thing, I'm not covering it in 3 minutes deck, but in an accelerator, we usually teach startups separately how to do demos. And especially in the online world, it's very important to kind of figure out how you can do it well. If you actually open the doors and you get to that longer call, you actually want to show how the product works. There were already questions about competition and market. Disclaimer, these are not my favorite slides. I know how they need to look like, but I usually try to jump over them very, very quickly as I'm an entrepreneur, but not a business person myself. But basically, there are different formats how you can go about competitive analysis display. And I'll show you also the examples, but basically you can use the quadrant approach where you kind of indicate, you have 2 axes and you indicate the competition in different areas, and then where do you stand there. You can have these kind of checkbox things where you show which features you have and the competitors don't, and you can just simply list your kind of advantages and not go deep into the competition. But I will refer to what I already answered to Agni about being politically correct. I would say be honest and realistic. Usually, if there are no competitors, it actually means nobody needs your product, or you really have not done your homework. If there is competition, and if you have kind of a differentiation over it, it's actually a good sign. So it means that there's activity in the market, so people are actually buying it. There's a certain awareness. So just be kind of realistic about it. Definitely think about competition outside of your direct industry. I see it now more and more, but some while back people would be like saying, oh, there's other 3 startups building this, but in reality they're competing with Google or with Amazon, or they're competing with Excel spreadsheets, or as one of our recent investments video CV guys say, we're actually, our biggest competitor is the mindset of the recruiters, because they don't want to have video interviews, kind of pre-recorded video interviews. As I already said, definitely avoid the, oh, we rule and they suck approach. There's definitely something good in what the competitors are doing. And at least my and Startup Wise Guys ways, we praise the realistic founders, because if they're realistic about their competition, they're also realistic about their customers and about their own business. Of course, there can be different approaches here. Thanks, Juris. I see you're again adding good. I see you could see the Startup Wise Guys training. So great for you. And everybody else, if you have something more to add, then definitely do it. Let's look at the examples. I think they will explain it a little bit better. Again, reminder, these are super early stage startup slides, and you can also see how not to do things. In this particular case, Mega Max ugly way to display logos, and always opt for a white background if you have to, because not always you can get the competitors' logos with this transparent background. So this is the Gartner's Quadrant, and actually here it's very, very important, what do you put on the axis. So for example, here the startup has chosen to talk about functionality and is it free or is it paid. You have to be you have to understand how do you want to compare yourself. But I personally find these ones a little bit to be like bullshit slide, because the only thing, it's like you can still choose anything that is more appealing to you and kind of put yourself, and usually everybody's in the right upper quadrant because they're kind of like the best ones, and so on. So see if that's the best way how to portray your competition. And also when you're presenting this, try not to waste too much time to list the competitors. That doesn't matter. You can say it's very dense market for this particular target audience, but we're not tackling that target audience, and in our direct competitor is only this one. Or you can say it's a very busy kind of competitive landscape. However, we're focusing on a particular geographic area where there's actually only 3 serious competitors, and we know a 4th one that is looking at this market, right? So kind of add a layer to these slides, because otherwise they don't usually tell much. I jumped over. Yeah, so this is actually an interesting format. It's kind of like a combination of these kind of checkboxes, and the startup is explaining the competition based on various features, and I actually like this format a little bit better. But of course, it's difficult to do this if you have a lot of competitors. Then maybe you have to somehow group them and be more vague about how you explain the kind of how do you list this. And this is another one which is quite interesting, that the startup has kind of segmented the competition and shown, okay, we compete here. I like this approach because I think it's good if your target audience doesn't know the industry well, then there's an educational element of it, right? Then you can kind of show that, hey, we actually really understand the market and we actually fit only in this area. But then again, maybe it doesn't explain sufficiently. It really matters what is the voiceover, kind of what does the startup say on the slide, how they explain themselves, their own positioning, or how they stand out, or with whom actually they compete. So three examples of how to do competitive analysis. I hope there's not more questions. Also, Agne, I hope this clarifies even deeper the question that you asked before. If we look at the market, so for those of you who are already in the startup bubble, you will know the slides with the bubbles. so there's the sum or total addressable market and the additional terminology. I personally, again, dislike this approach because I think that you kind of can just come up with billions and billions and just put it there. I usually like more kind of relatable and realistic goals. But again, the choice is yours, and I would just suggest Googling this a little bit deeper. And there's a lot of extremely good articles about specifically how to display your kind of market. Something that for me always kind of rings in my ears when started saying the market is huge. Like we could play this, bingo, startup buzzword bingo, and market is huge is one of the most overused phrases. So I would suggest to still talk about kind of very realistic numbers or any other data that actually show that you can grow. You know who your target customers are, and you can give some global context. Very often, startups also opt for saying, "Okay, in the world, that's this." And if you remember Silver pitch, they were saying in Finland alone, we're talking about this number of forest owners. I prefer kind of to be more kind of realistic, but of course, any investor wants to see how their money will grow. So you also have to be smart. How do you display the opportunity versus the reality? Very simple example. So this is some bubbles, and kind of basically you kind of just zoom in on the market that you actually want to tackle. Often here startups add also a time frame. So in kind of what time distance or kind of will you be planning to reach that particular goal? This is another way to do it. This is actually a Latvian startup, Orocon, and they're into construction business, and they talk about European market, and they say there's 52,000 companies that actually need what we're building, and that's the market we want to tackle. So again, very, very simple way to go about it. For me, very realistic questions if it's ambitious enough, and also sometimes you might have to need to explain a little bit the industry because you don't know, is 52,000 a lot or not, and it depends on the business model. It depends kind of on what you're selling, what the product is. In their case, it's clearly sufficient. I'm almost out of breath, but I'm also reaching the other end of the 3 minutes pitch anatomy. So if we talk about attraction and goals, basically here it's very simple. You should show any numbers or something that proves that what you build is needed out there in the market, that somebody is actually willing to pay for this. If you are already an established business, so if you already have launched your product and you have paying customers, then you would probably play with financial numbers. So we are big lovers of monthly recurring revenue, or MRR, at Startup Wise Guy. So that's actually the main number we look at when the startups are applying for investment, for example, for us. And also that's a metric we still ask our portfolio companies to report. So we want to see how their monthly recurring revenue is growing. You might also talk about the annual recurring revenue, or you could be talking about month-over-month growth. So anything that kind of indicates the financial side of it. But if you are not there yet, or maybe you are in kind of like freemium phase, so there's not money movement, there's a lot of other things you can play with. So you can show users, you can show app downloads, you can talk about the existing clients, especially in B2B. Sometimes you don't need that many clients to prove that your traction is good. If you're pre-product launch, you might be talking about pilot projects or beta testers. So anything that shows there is movement. Oh my God, 8 p.m. right, curfew. Go, Julia. And as I said, satisfied client testimonial is something that I find surprising that people are not using. Again, just find your numbers, find which numbers work for you. And if you don't have the financials yet, or the product is not launched, still find something that proves it, because the investor doesn't know, they don't understand. Here's an example from another of our portfolio startups that's on Dato, a fintech startup. They have kind of combined many things in one slide. For my taste, a bit too cluttered for a slide for the talking. It's probably from their slide deck that they're sending, but here you can see they actually have shown some of the existing clients. They're also showing their financial metrics kind of over one year period. And I'm right now, I just don't recall if they which months were they preparing this pitch deck at? Are they showing future, or they're showing showing the existing one? So that's one way how to go about it. Sorry. And you might recall I mentioned roadmaps as an additional element to use. I really love them, and I think they're a great way to show where you're going. And you can again choose what do you want to emphasize, because you can talk about the financial growth, what you have in your plans, but please no spreadsheet screenshots on slide deck. That's definitely not the level of detail that you need to show in a 3-minute speech. You can talk about geographic expansion, ambition to go to certain markets. You can talk about the technological side. So for example, if you're still building the product, or let's say it's something more complex that's related to hardware, you might want to show kind of what's the roadmap, what's planned for the future. And some startups also focus on the fundraising. So what and when they're planning to do with the, when they plan to fundraise, and what they're going to do with the money. And also you can just use just generally say, hey, our goal is this, right? In 5 years' time, be top 1 startup in that particular segment in Europe. Whichever way you choose, again, you have to figure out what works for you. And here's actually an example again of City that I already used in the beginning, and they have put together both the financial roadmap, but also the geographical one in one slide. This is Estonian startup working actually in work safety, and they were also they kind of have indicated mostly the geographic expansion planning, and also the call for the ask for the investment. And this is one of my favorite ones. It's a Ukrainian startup that is helping to get patients for clinical trials in US. And they basically say, well, our goal is that there's 0 incurable diseases. And of course, it's probably a very aspirational plan, but on the other hand, it kind of adds this vision level to just the financial metrics. And nowadays, more and more investors, especially in Nordics, are looking for an impact angle. There's like sustainability investing right now, and impact investing is super hot. So investors are looking beyond just financial metrics and just beyond amazing team and technology. And if you have something on that level, that also really will help you get attention. I'm reaching the last phase of the 3 minutes pitch structure. So the team, it's actually one of my favorite slides, and for early stage investment, team is the most important criteria for very early stage investors, because startups pivot and they change their business, and they change their business model, but the team, usually the co-founder team, is the one that stays and are the ones who either can make it or not. So use your opportunity to explain and pitch your team very well. Some tips that we like to give. One is, if you can, and in remote world is very difficult, but if you have a team picture where you're actually together, I would advise to opt for that instead of these LinkedIn profile bubbles. For remote world, you can always make a Zoom screenshot. You definitely want to show that the team has relevant industry experience, but also complementary skills. So you need the hustlers and you need the hackers, right? You need the people who can sell, and you can need the people who can build the business, and the ones who actually can manage company. If you have worked together or otherwise have gone through some difficulties in life together, that's also a very good sign. For example, we have some startups that run winter, these trails, these 40 kilometers together, and somebody who actually can do that probably can do a lot in business. Or nowadays, a lot of startup teams already have had one venture or two ventures. They say we have already sold one company and now we're building another one. And of course, for any investor, that is the moment when the eyes light up, because they're like, okay, so that's an experienced founding team that already can work together. And last but not least, stay human and stay fun if that's your culture. I always appreciate that when you can feel actually how the team is. And here's one example. That's the same team that is actually aiming to have 0 incurable diseases in the world. And it's just a nice team slide. You will probably remember them with the guys, smiley guys with the surfboard, but they have indicated that they have all 3 kind of areas covered. So they have a tech guy, they have the marketing and sales guy, and they have the CEO. And also they have chosen one kind of like thing to add for each of the team members. The biggest difficulty is that many startups lose a lot of time on the team slide. And if you have really a lot to say, try to again figure out this one thing or 2 things that you need to really prove. Usually industry experience and something about the culture or how you work together, if you have had experience working together, works the best. And the ask. So as you might remember, I said always an opportunity to ask for something. Nobody can forbid you to do that. And that's usually something that we advise startups to incorporate at the end of the presentation. And if you are not looking for money, you might be looking for other things: connections, intros, feedback, hiring, and maybe just getting advisor on board. So definitely use that opportunity. Another thing that you can use at the end is a reminder about your higher vision or goal. A lot of startups do that. Remember the Hive guy in his second pitch, he said, this is how the future is going to look like. And if you want to be part of that, then join us, right? So he kind of like talked about the beyond just this business, we're building like automated world, and you want to be, you know, the futuristic thinking person who's ahead of the curve and things like that. That's a way to do it. And another very technical thing you can use at the very end of the presentation, when people they see that you're finishing, they usually have like, it's almost over. So then they have a bit more attention span. You can remind 3 things what were important about your pitch, kind of like do a recap, and it also works usually nicely. And my recap. So so you remember. So pitch is only a door opener for a follow-up conversation. You have to know your audience and the goal so you can adapt accordingly. And actually many startups even have different hooks and sometimes even entirely different slide decks for different audiences. And that might actually answer some of the questions we had about this B2B, B2C, right? That you can actually have, it doesn't have to be one slide deck. You're not limited, you can have it. You have to check the internal logic, especially about the problem, audience, and solution in your pitch deck. Remember to show the product, whichever way you can find it, and overall figure out your winning strategy, because you will have to say no to certain things just because pitch is such a short format. And this was 3 minutes, but imagine if you're in an elevator, and we're today talking with a colleague that especially in the Baltics, there's very few elevators where you actually have 30 seconds. You probably have from 1st to the 5th floor, and you're like, damn, what can I say? I see Anna is already showing her face, which probably indicates that we should be wrapping it up, right?
I'm just reminding that I'm still here. Go ahead and continue talking or answering questions.
I hope whoever needs to get home, then I hope you're in a safe place to do that. I still had the last kind of like reminders. One of those is that your audience is not a robot. And what do I mean with that? And I feel that I'm getting tired, and I hope you're not extremely tired from me yet. But basically, this especially goes out to those people who have anxiety and who would rather die than go and speak publicly. I want you to remember that there's a lot of things that are not about you. And if there is this grumpy person in the first row, or somebody is with the camera on, but they are like looking in their mobile phone or something like that, it's most likely not about you. You actually don't know, maybe their stomach is aching, maybe their kid just sent an extremely urgent message from school or something. What helps me, I had this really funny experience, and I had to pitch a Baltic Report, which is one of my babies, one of my projects that I love working on, at Digital Freedom Festival. I was the first speaker on the second day of the conference. That's terrible time to be, because everybody's like, oh, like walking around, nobody wants to listen to anyone. And I realized the night before that I got extremely stressed out. And I was wondering, like, I'm okay with public speaking. I like to be on stage. I still get stressed out. I still sweat, and my legs still go shaky and all of that. Nobody canceled that. I think everybody gets it, even the actors. But I noticed the level of stress that was unhealthy. And I asked myself, hey, Zane, what's wrong? You can do this. Like, what's wrong with you? And I realized that in my head, I had a total fuck up, because I was going there thinking, oh, I want the people who know me afterwards saying, oh, well, you were such a good speaker, because it's a home market, it's people who know me. And then I was like, no, it's not why I'm going there. My purpose is entirely different. I'm actually going there to talk about the 6 months project that I basically had put all of my sweat and blood and time in. And I just really want to talk to those few people in the room who are curious about it. I just want to tell what I have to say. First of all, it helped me to calm down. Secondly, I've never had so many technical issues on one stage. Like, I had 2 minutes while this screen was switching from Kahoot quiz to my presentation, 2 minutes on a big stage. And if I hadn't done my meditation the night before with my own ego, I think I would be in a very bad place. But I was actually in a decent place, and I was cracking jokes and waiting till the tech guys solve it, and they never solved the clicker problem. Long story short, know your purpose, know why you're doing it. And for startup founders, usually you don't need to look far. Most of you are driven by some kind of urge, by an idea, by a desire. Remember it and tell your ego to F off, and it will just help you manage that stress so much more. And also breathe and meditate. That's it. I could talk for hours about that. I will not touch it. But the reminder about the audience, people's attention and memory span is limited. So be a bit careful. And if you see, for example, especially for a longer, not maybe pitch, but for a longer presentation, you might need to pause in between. You might need to kind of like recap certain things. You might need to ask if they're still with you, right? So just be aware, they're humans. Big abstract numbers don't resonate, and people usually do not understand them. Like I told you, right? Is 52,000 companies in Europe. Is it a big number or it's a small number? Is 1 billion a big one or like a small one? It depends. If you're talking about 1 billion feathers, it might not mean anything, right? So you have to give context, and you have to kind of help the audience follow you. Brain has this interesting thing that it can only store limited amount of new information. This goes back to my preaching about the expert or non-expert audience. If you're talking in like the guy, like the Simon from Hive was in his first pitch, it's done, it's gone. Like you can't accommodate so much information about satellites unless you're an expert in that field, right? So you have to be aware what existing information your audience might have, and you should not be throwing too much of new information at them, because otherwise you will simply lose them. Yes, and as I said, people are people. You don't know what's in their head, what's in their body, and just don't take. Life generally is not very personal, and the world is not very personal in public speaking. It's even so, more so. And this is a super recap. So where to start? If you are in this phase when you're preparing your pitch deck, if you have a team, then I would say definitely involve them. Find a format that works for you. I'm a big paper or whiteboard lover. I love to draw things and ideate. Some people like to instantly start building slides. Some write transcript. Whatever is your thing. The only thing that I don't advise is to pitch from a written transcript, because the more you try to memorize a written text, the more likely you will blank, like you will lose it, because your brain cannot remember it so well. And a written text is way more complex than a spoken one. So be careful. I usually only mark keywords in sections, and I try and memorize those, kind of what's the idea with that particular slide, but not the full text. Of course, people are different. I know those who learn by heart and they still can pull it off, and God help you not to have memory issues. Definitely collect material. And here I'm talking more about slide decks rather than your storyline. So definitely find visual things that you can put on slides, screenshots, as I told you, remember the product, figure out what mood you want to, do you want to be more funny? Do you want to be serious? Maybe you want to use GIFs, maybe you need a video to show your product. Definitely, if you're explaining something difficult, remember Hive, the second pitch. Visualizations were his savior. So if you're building something complex, you might need to ask a designer to help you to explain some more complex things, maybe get some testimonials or quotes. So kind of gather the material that you can afterwards use it. And if not in your 3 minutes pitch, maybe for your website, maybe for a longer pitch presentation, something. Once you're building the slides, again, very simple. If you already have a brand, remember to be compliant to your brand. If not, just be consistent. Simply choose a color, choose a font, and then just use it. Slides don't need to be sophisticated, and they need to carry information. After you've done it, definitely check grammar and typos. I don't know about you, but for me, typos is like they totally, my brain goes on a different journey and it's like, oh, wow, there's a typo and I'm not listening to you anymore. Definitely, again, check the storyline and logic and consistency so that kind of it is logical what you're saying, and drop anything that does not add value. And very often when founders build their first pitches, they're 5 to 6 minutes long. And then you have to start cutting things out that's kind of, you're like, okay, I can go without this. Okay, I can tell this shorter, so kind of, that's also okay. You can build longer and then you can go backwards. And last but not least, definitely rehearsing and iterating. What I usually, I hate to hear myself in a video recording, so I will not watch this one, I'm telling you, but I do talk to myself when I'm preparing for presentations. And if I hear hiccups, kind of like if I hear, there's a Russian word, nestikovka, I like that one a lot. So if there's something that doesn't click, most likely it will click even less when you have to present it under stress situation. So kind of change it. And definitely if you can, try to pitch it to your audience, because if you're pitched to your teammates, they might not represent the audience knowledge level, and they might not give you relevant feedback. So if you can find somebody that actually is the audience you want to get through to, it's the best one to give them. And minor thing, there's the saying that practice makes perfect. We say practice makes permanent, and anybody who has done any serious sports, you know that if you train something wrong, you might end up getting an injury, not a goal. So basically what this means is that the slide deck and your pitch and many things around your business is a living organism. It actually should change. And the moment you kind of find how to do things better, then iterate, then change it. You pitch to an audience and they say, we don't understand this hook doesn't work for me. Okay, revisit, go back, find ways that do. Don't stick with something that you think is like, yeah, it's fine. This is, as I said, what we saw when COVID wave started, that the startups 5 months into pandemic were still pitching their own pitch decks, and we're like, hello, the world has changed. Why are you pitching the same thing? And it just means that they cannot react to the world. How can they react to their customer needs if they're not listening what's out there? So living organism. This is the final thing from me. These are 4 books that I really, really highly suggest finding, maybe even buying. Each of them is beautiful with something else. Made to Stick is generally an amazing book for anyone actually in communication, because it talks about how to make your ideas simple, how to make them memorable, and it's just like every second page is a quote you could use in a presentation like this. So definitely highly advised. TED Talks goes a lot deeper into the structure of TED Talks specifically, but I found it very useful nonetheless. And I think there's a lot of blog posts also about it, and there are TED Talks about how to do TED Talks. So if you don't like the book format, which is long, then you can definitely find some videos. Slide Theology book is something for total slide freaks. If you're like, I love this book. It's actually not a new one, but it has like, if you had the time to prepare your presentation for 3 months as the only thing that you would ever do, this is the book for you, because it goes into everything: data visualizations, how should you work with where should elements be on your slides, where the attention goes, and how should you gather data and things like that. Even though it's getting a bit old now, because I think we have moved on in the presentation world from the time, but nevertheless, an extremely good book. But my favorite of these 4, and it has nothing actually to do with slide decks, is Never Split the Difference. If anybody has read it, I'm sure you would say that it is amazing. Chris Voss is actually a former FBI, oh my God, the word slipped me. When you have the cases when you have to negotiate for people to be released. Hostages, yeah, agent. So and the book is actually it's about negotiations, and it's about how can you lead negotiations when the cost is lives, and thus they never split the difference. And besides, he's telling so many real stories from his work at FBI that you can also read this book just as a thriller. Like, it's mesmerizing. Like, it's one of the best business books, apart from Bad Blood, about Theranos case, that I've literally have gorged on. So, and especially I think for guys, you will love it. It's amazing. But it also teaches very necessary things for negotiations, which is basically what you do majority of your life at startup. And also some of those concepts help when you're building a slide deck or pitch presentation, because again, he talks a lot about how do you know your audience, how do you know which strings to pull. And he actually talks about the black swans, which is the information that you didn't know that you need, and that is like a lock that unlocks the audience, that unlocks the other person, and suddenly they not only give you the hostages, but they even don't blow anything up, right? So definitely a very, very good read, and as you can hear, I'm extremely excited about it. Yes, and he has a masterclass in the masterclass. Thanks, Agne, for writing that. So, phew, I'm out of breath. We are 3 minutes till 2 hours and curfew. So I'll stop sharing here. I'll look at some of the faces that are still alive. How are you? Well, those who have faces are smiling. That's good. That says like kids in the background, probably. Ansis is waving to us. That's cool.
Yeah, 4 of them.
Yeah, I got rid of my 2. They were really disturbing. And Martin is writing he's alive. Romance is all fine, and Smiley is good. Anybody wants to kind of maybe share what was a takeaway for you? What is something that you will take away from today? Some brave people. Juris, I'm going to use you as you were so active in the chat.
Oh, no, please, no. I can only praise the presentation. It's world class, as always. Startup Voice guys, I remember a few years ago, we joined them as an accelerator, and even then it felt like a world class level accelerator, but now I see you've gotten only better.
Thanks. I was not leading your pitch training, so at least I hope you had something new to listen. And no, we did not force Joris to come here to promote Startup Wise guys, but I'm very happy to see our portfolio companies building new ventures, and that's great. Anybody else? David is like, okay, give me those investors. This is a very, very difficult question because there are definitely a lot of databases. You can actually go to Crunchbase, you can go to Dealroom, you can go to PitchBook, you can look for them there. There is actually, I will write it in the chat, there's a new actually startup themselves. There are guys who are building the landscape VC where they try to aggregate anonymous references about investors. And I know that my colleague actually has a very good database, but I don't know if it's an open one and if he's sharing it. One more thing that I can also suggest in the Baltic report that I was building with my team, we collected the active investors in the Baltics and some of the most active investors from Europe that have invested in the Baltics. So that's also one reference point that I can give you. It's not a very big and comprehensive database, but I think it's very good quality because it indicates activity that is related to our region. And that's also something that you should be look for. Agnes is sharing. Do you want to share it also with voice?
Okay, I'm not going to be shy. Yeah, so takeaway, name dropping in presentations and what kind of investors we're looking for.
Cool. Yeah. Name dropping. Sometimes you have to play that card. That's just how it goes. Yeah, David, I guess that you got the answer. But yeah, like any of the big databases is out there for you. And by the way, word of mouth, so ask other founders. And you should also look for investors that invest in a specific industry, because in some there's extreme specialization. I don't know, Anna, actually, if you're going to have more content about investors specifically in the program.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, we're going to talk to literally an investor also directly. But what I can suggest to you when it comes to investors is, as Zan said, I think the most useful tip is always to look for your industry specific and your stage specific investor, because so many of them can be eliminated just by going through their homepage, really. And then talk to the fellow founders in your industry, or ask around the community members. I know Tech Hub and TechChill and the rest of the community organizations in Latvia are more than welcoming when it comes to founders asking for help to get them together with investors. We have a really wide network with all of those communities, and no one would ever say no to at least giving you the contacts, and the rest is on you, of course.
And Anna, by the way, thanks for mentioning the stage. This is extremely important, and to put it very simply, if you're raising small rounds, you probably need to look at accelerator funds, not advertising ourselves, but just those are the ones who will probably believe in you earlier on. And also business angels. Right now, Estonian business angels are extremely active with syndicates. There's this also Nordic Business Angels program. I'm not sure in which kind of stage they're at, and if you're in a later stage, then if you already have numbers and you have the product out there and you're expanding and growing, then you can already look at the VC funds. But I guess you're going to be talking more about all of these nuances in the further. When somebody asks why are they pitching, by the way, actually pitching at tech conferences is a very good way to also test where you're at and actually get visibility. And lately, I don't know if that's the case. I don't recall TechChill right now had Latvian Business Angel, I think, syndicate one of the years. But in Estonia, for example, it's very active right now that you actually can win an investment as part of pitch competition. For example, in Startup Day that just happened in August, it was our startups who were winning syndicates on stage, and it goes up to, I think, something like 250K. So decent. Alrighty. Anybody else last points about maybe what was a takeaway?
I think you, Zana, represented everything you showed us today. You practiced what you preach, literally, because you kept everyone's attention all the way through, and everyone was interacting in the chat section and with emojis and whatnot all the way through. So otherwise, we would question your authority on the topic, but all good. It was all really good, and I'm happy to see that everyone was interested in the topic, because I'm sure it's a question that is of a very high importance for all of you, especially knowing that there's a pitch competition coming up as the concluding activity of this program in just over a month. So feel free to watch over this session 1 or 2 or 3 times, how many you need. And also for the lucky ones who we are going to select for one-on-one meetings, make sure to come with a specific question and a specific description of your business, so that you can fit within the designated time frame and be as precise as possible. But more details on that to be followed. If there are no more questions, I would love to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and especially Zane for doing this remotely, literally, in all the senses of remote working that we have these days.
Yeah.
For the rest of you, I'm going to see you next Monday evening. Please make sure to follow all of the news and messages I'm posting on Slack, because both the PDF of these slides that Zane presented today are going to be shared there, and also this recording of our session is going to be put on our Slack. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. I think that's it from me. Applause and emojis, and we can do the same thing we did at the very beginning of this session.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks everyone for survival. I really hope you did, and I will also through I will share maybe some more links, but also what I can definitely. And I saw what somebody already was writing about the examples. Roland was used thanking for examples. Watch other people pitch, because it and most likely you will find more mistakes than good examples, as I was showing you a kind of selection. And Textual has, I think, all of the pitch competitions are actually online. Latitude 59 has it. Slush, I'm not sure. By the way, apologies for the land of darkness. Just my light switch is very far away from me. And basically, just watch out for these technology conferences. They have a lot of these video recordings, and you can. I think sometimes through somebody else's mistakes, you can learn even more than through the good ones. And really, just do it. There's no secret. Like, you cannot learn it. And how is it, the Star Wars? There is no try. Yeah, there is no try. The more you practice, the better you're gonna get, and the more you will feel your purpose. The less stressed out you will be about it. Awesome. That's it. Anna, you need to switch us off. Otherwise,
I'm
I will
stopping
go
the
on
recording now
for another 10 minutes.